That moment of discovery can be kind of a shocker, and you might want to panic, but there's a lot of things you can do to deal with your teenager using drugs. First of all, if you just found this video, either you're subscribed to the channel, which thank you for that. We are so glad to have you here. Or you've got a concern right now that has to do with a teenager. You may have some suspicions, or you've been able to confirm that there are some drug issues. So I don't want to take this on alone. I got my friend here today. This is Blu Robinson. Blu is the founder of ADDICT to Athlete, which is a phenomenal program that's doing a lot of good for a lot of people. And you've got some reasons to know about this topic, don't you?
I do. I know it well.
So Blu, I'm thinking where I want to start, if I can just jump in. Remember, your job as a parent is just one thing. It's to love them, no matter what, and even if. And this is one of the even ifs, okay? So let's just pass that test right out of the chute so that we can move on to higher things. It's your job to love them, no matter what and even if. But Blu, have you noticed this when we discover that there may be a drug issue or that there is a drug issue, there's a reaction.
Absolutely.
What have you noticed about that, and where would you steer us?
Well, when you first discovered that your teenagers has a drug or alcohol problem, or even have caught it, finding it in the room as you're picking up their massive mess that teenagers' rooms typically are, that first discovery is shock and a little bit of fear and scared and being scared. But love has to prevail before as a foundation before anything else can happen, and that sometimes is difficult when you might be angry or frustrated. But remember, there's a reason for that substance use, and if anything else is built upon that foundation other than love, you're going to run into a big challenge. Get away from the fear, get away from being scared, and get back to, I'm going to fill the void that was created somehow with the substances trying to take over. I'm going to fill it with love.
Yeah. Now, can we make a distinction also right here? And I know you're going to know exactly where to go with this, Blu. There's a difference between loving your teenager and trusting your teenager.
Absolutely.
In fact, we just nuked the trust, didn't we? When you discover this, trust.
Absolutely. And teenagers are going to look at that as one and the same. What, you don't trust me?
They might.
Yeah, no, I don't. But that doesn't mean you don't love your teenager. And so it's important to be able to distinguish the two. That when you've discovered something as huge and as powerful as a substance abuse issue, trust has to be taken back. Love can fill that void, but trust has to be taken back, because too much too fast, and this has been the outcome. This could be friends, it could be influences, it could even be things as severe as depression or maybe even abuse. But first, trust has to be pulled back, basically so that you can wrap your arms around your teenager and begin from that foundation. It doesn't mean that you don't love them. It means that we have a problem that we have to start addressing now, and without retracting that trust, it's not going to be able to heal itself. You've got to be able to stand up and say, I love you, and I'm not going to love you to death. Therefore, you and I are going to get real close for a while.
Which we've got some techniques and strategies for. I just thought as you were talking about trust, Blu, that it's kind of like a bank account.
Yeah.
Where you make deposits, you build up a balance. And then you make a big old withdrawal.
Absolutely.
And when it's withdrawn, there is no trust in the balance. So when your child does this, when your teenager is discovered in the drug use, substance abuse, it's like a huge withdrawal from that trust account.
Absolutely.
And it's okay that there's not a balance right now. That's just where we're going to start.
Absolutely.
We do not withdraw the love. In fact, we're going to come at it with an increase. Is that fair?
That's very fair.
An increase of love.
And typically, when you look at a bank account like issue such as that, sometimes you have to retain just a little bit of money in there to keep it active. That little bit of trust, as the massive withdrawal is just taken out, but that little bit of trust to keep that bank account open needs to be very focused. You have to have $10 in your bank account to keep yourself active in this bank. That $10 of emotional investment is going to be, well, we're going to see how to increase this now. So don't take it all, but leave that little 10 to say, we can work on this. From $10 in a bank account, you could create millions. So, one of the most important things we can do, especially having just discovered that there's been a problem with drugs or alcohol with your teenager, is to retain that line of communication. You've got to figure out and help them understand where, who, and why. And it's super important, Paul, that we don't ever have parents go right to a fight kind of conversation. Like, I found this, tell me what you did with it. Who have you been hanging out with? I've told you your friends haven't been very good. If we go down that line, we call that fight talk, control talk.
Yeah.
It requires what's called reactive listening, meaning if I come at a teenager and I say, I found this, can you explain it? You're in big trouble, Mr. or Mrs. They're actually going to retract and push away from that and reactively listen and say, it's not mine, it's my friend's, it's none of your business, and that turns into a lock.
It'll be a defensive initial reaction.
Absolutely. And it has to be. I mean, think about it when we get, pulled over by a police officer or when we get scolded by our boss. Our natural reaction is to react instead of, reflect and find out what the problem is. So I like to teach parents the concept of being able to search talk with your loved one, with your son or daughter. Basically, being able to find out through open-ended questions what's causing this, what's happened. Allow them to tell the story. The problem with search talk, as you might know, is that sometimes we get stuck. Sometimes we say, hey, I found this in your book bag. What can you tell me about it? Nothing. Well, then you're locked, right? Typically, parents will give up after a few sessions of that, asking open-ended questions and having no return. And they say, fine then, control talk, you're grounded. But if you'll keep going just a little bit more, you will be able to start moving them. But it takes search talk, open-ended questions, and reflective listening. You've got to be willing to hear what they say.
And persist.
Absolutely.
You got to do this a little longer than you want to, but not as long as you fear.
Oh, and that's where the love comes in. You love your son. You love your daughter. It's going to take time. Are you willing to, as you've taught, parent out of your inconvenience and really sit in there for the long run?
Right. It's not going to be convenient or easy.
No.
So get that out of your mind right up front. Hunker down. And you've got support. We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. But while we're on communication, Blue, can I just acknowledge that the questions we use and the way that we phrase them make a difference?
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
For example,
inflection, tone, all that stuff. You're right.
Listen to the difference here. Why is this in your pack? All right, first of all, what answer to that is going to satisfy you?
Yeah, none.
Do you really want to know why? Like
No.
he tells you and you're like, oh, okay.
I found that on the way home yesterday.
No.
Yeah.
So stay away from why. And like you were saying, let's ask an open-ended question that's focused on searching and discovery and also support and love.
Absolutely.
So tell me about this. Without any judgment.
Absolutely.
Okay? Help me to understand this because I'm on your side. And you won't get an immediate response. Probably be like, well, that's not mine. I don't know anything about that. Whatever.
Absolutely.
And then you just stick with it.
Yep.
It's like, man, buddy, I sure love you. And I'm trying to understand. Help me to understand what happened today.
That's the beauty of allowing them to teach you, right?
Yeah.
Because if the teenager can teach you where this came from, why this is happening, you're going to be able to feel a little bit more complete with the story. Because like you've said, everyone has a story. And teenagers, they make up some gnarly stories.
Oh, yeah.
And so getting past that and removing the emotion, although it's going to be difficult, and being able to have a conversation with them is going to be able to teach you what they're feeling. Mostly, like we said at the very beginning, something hurt them. And it could be anything. It could be something that happened completely under another part of their life. But we've got to be able to operate with a cool head.
Yes. Now, so far, Blue, this sounds really touchy-feely, kumbaya.
Utopian, doesn't it?
Right? Because you're connecting in love and you're supporting and you're going to listen. Now, I know that you're concerned. Does there need to be a consequence? Do we need to have some kind of discipline or corrective action? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Probably so.
Absolutely.
Here's what powers that up. We're going to make the discipline all business.
Absolutely.
Transactional. Okay, you know what I'm talking about with that?
I'm absolutely with you.
Share some of your experience about that.
Discipline, especially when something comes up as sensitive as this topic, because it can go down so many different paths. Discipline has to be very unique and very focused to your teenage son or daughter. And what I mean by that is being able to use it at its root word and principle, being able to teach the reasons why. If we're able to do this with a purpose in mind, it's going to be much more receivable than it would be if we were to just blanket statement say you're grounded. Because if we do that, well then end of topic, end of discussion, there's no room for growth. But discipline has to come in forms of being able to hold the boundary, being able to express your concerns as why you know that the situations that they found themselves in is not okay, and being able to hold them accountable. Paul, I've seen too many times when discipline comes where we do the quick and easy thing, which is you're grounded, and then a few days later, or a few hours later sometimes, they're out doing their stuff again. It's the old classic. You go to your room and think about this. As they retreat to their room, there's TVs and Xboxes and cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So it's got to be focused, and it's got to be able to teach the principle of motivation to correct the behaviors.
Grounding.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like chaining yourself to a bear.
Absolutely.
It's not fun
terrifying
for you, and it's not that effective. So in making the discipline all business, let me just give you an example of what comes to my psychologist mind. You're providing all kinds of luxuries for your teenager. The average American teenager has far more privilege than they deserve.
It's true.
And what I mean is what they're morally capable of handling well. Mm-hmm. And you're only required to provide for them certain things. I call them the 5 freebies.
Oh, yeah.
The 5 freebies are, in this order: love. You don't mess with that. Mm-hmm. That's why we started there. Air. I know you're not providing this, but you have no business depriving them of it.
Absolutely.
Air, water, food, and shelter. Okay, those 5 we're not going to mess with. Everything else is negotiable. Mm-hmm. So where does telecommunications or access to electronic equipment, for example, these are a big deal for teenagers.
Absolutely.
And they feel entitled to it. Is it on the freebie list? No.
No, it's not.
Can we have a business transaction where they can have certain access to electronics, for example, those little handheld devices that they are so fond of?
Right.
When they have a clean drug test, or as long as they remain clean. Now, is it okay for parents to do a drug test on their teenager?
Absolutely. More often than not, what I find with that is if you can obtain one and to kind of have it somewhere visual, is that it's also a motivator for them when they want to change. Because what they say is that, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be able to go with you because my parents are going to drug test me. So it also becomes that excuse that helps move them away from that situation. And so sometimes, all drug tests do is keep them honest. That's it. So what we want to do is establish that before we have to catch them. And so, to believe it or not, it really is a powerful motivator and can be one of those mechanisms of discipline.
They might try to turn it against you.
Oh, they most certainly will.
You don't trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already talked about that.
And be open with that. No, unfortunately, right now, we don't. But there's a way to get back.
And I want to trust you. I want to. Here's a way that you can do that. Mm-hmm. Okay, the drug test.
Absolutely.
For example, so we're going to use this in a positive way. It's all business. It's like you can have the cell phone or not have the cell phone. Either way is fine. As long as you're clean, you can have one.
You can have it.
Right? Something like that. I'm just pulling that as an example.
No, it's very applicable.
We make it all business. And it's all about building up that trust. Mm-hmm. So we frame it that way with our teenager. And suddenly, instead of fighting against them or trying to prove that they're misbehaving, we're giving them ways to demonstrate their maturity and their good choices.
Absolutely. And it's going to take time, and you're going to have some rough spots in the middle. It's not going to be all cut and dry, and you're going to have to be able to pull from a lot of different avenues and resources from your own experience as well. So it's important to know that a one-size-fits-all doesn't really work in these kind of situations for each family. So be able to utilize past experiences and then people who have been there as well.
And Blue, you know this because you provide this.
Absolutely.
You don't have to do this in a vacuum. You don't have to do this alone. There is so much support available I mentioned Addict to Athlete. You're a founder of that program, which is there for the sole purpose of providing support and professional services. You're going to need some professional support and service and help, and that's okay.
Absolutely.
This is part of your resource list as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things are available to people, Blu, that they might not even be aware of?
Absolutely. And this is where it comes to be a really important part of what's going to be able to help your son or daughter. And that's being able to have a counselor or a therapist that's going to be able to bond with them. There's got to be that trust built between the two of them as well, because they're going because, well, they're broken, right? And we don't want to have a power ratio. You don't want a therapist or a counselor that picks sides. They want to be neutral. So sometimes as a parent, that might be hearing some things that are difficult even on your side. But more so than that, it's going to be able to allow the teenager to start venting some of the issues that created the addiction or the drug use in the first place. It's so important in this day and age that we utilize the resources that we have, because they're abundant out there. We have a lot to choose from. But being able to realize that drug use, those symptoms of addiction, they come from somewhere. And so it's important to realize that it's not just hey, I saw my friends doing this on the playground. They're typically indicators that build up, and it's a slow process. On average, Dr. Paul, it takes about 2 years for parents to realize that their teenagers even having a drug or alcohol issue. So there's a build up to it. So watch for those signs and then seek counseling and assistance. Don't keep it quiet. We've lived in a world of anonymity for a long time, but there's so many resources out there, and it's so common that dollars to dimes, one of your neighbors, one of your friends, or even some of your relatives have a teenager that struggled with it as well.
You're definitely not alone in this, so reach out and use those resources.
Absolutely. And the thing that I want to really emphasize is it's not all doom and gloom. When the right principles are applied and the right people are involved and the right foundation of love and trust and discipline are set, the powerful thing that can come from these teenagers who have overcome these experiences are they become the next generation of individuals who can help people in their place. So it can actually, when the right principles be applied, it can be a motivator and institute great change for the future generations. So it's not all bad.
Dealing with our teenagers can be kind of a tricky part of parenting. We've got some other tips and strategies for you in our Parenting Power Up course.